a lot of your North Koreans live right on the margin. There have been famines there in the recent past. They really do have a hand-to-mouth existence, a lot of people in that country. When they get sent to Russia, the Russians are paying them about $2,000 a month, the same that they pay Russians.
Mark Urban is here, as he is every Monday, to talk us through the big foreign policy, diplomatic and defence stories. Hello, Mark.
Morning.
Welcome back. The United Nations Security Council is meeting today over North Korea's test on Thursday of what Pyongyang said was an intercontinental ballistic missile. What do we know about that?
Well, look, this caught my eye because in yesterday's Sunday Times, I reviewed this book rather bluntly called Nuclear War by Annie Jacobson. It's been nominated.
It's a fascinating review.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, look, it all starts with the North Koreans trundling one of these huge 22-wheel road transporters that they have, sticking the missile up on the back and firing it off at America. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what happened a week ago. I mean, they didn't fire it at America, but they fired one of these intercontinental ballistic missiles without telling anyone they were going to do so. So in that sense, very destabilizing behavior. It is going to be talked about in the Security Council tonight. But I think, look, the point about trying to tell Kim Jong-un or North Korea to sort of behave better and behave more like a responsible international actor, and in a case like that, for heaven's sake, warn us if you're going to do something like that, a test, firing the missile out into the Pacific. But it speaks to the degree, I think, that North Korea now feels very emboldened. And another thing we've got coming up this week on Wednesday is the upper house of the Russian parliament is supposed to ratify this new strategic cooperation treaty with North Korea. Now, of course, that's not exactly big parliamentary news. It's a bit of a rubber stamp under Putin, that sort of assembly. But I think what it speaks to, what both these things speak to, is the degree to which North Korea now has this solid military alliance with Russia. The North Korean foreign minister was saying last week that they're standing shoulder to shoulder with the Russians until victory over Ukraine, sending troops, as we know, to fight in Ukraine, sending millions of rounds of artillery ammunition, missiles, all the rest of it to Russia to continue the war. So it's become a much tighter relationship. And if you were to go back 10, 15 years when the international community, so-called, was trying to get North Korea, to comply with certain restrictions on its nuclear program, that type of thing, Russia could be counted on to abstain often, or sometimes even to vote for resolutions that were condemnatory of North Korea. It was China that was really stopping them from facing the full force of international sanctions. Now things are different. There's this intimate military relationship between the two countries. Russia effectively is doing top cover now, diplomatically and in other ways, for North Korea. And, we see the results. They feel emboldened.
Specifically, what does North Korea hope to get out of it? Because, as a pariah nation being defended by another pariah nation, you'd think is not such a huge diplomatic coup.
Well, there's been some interesting work done on how much cash they might make from sending soldiers to fight in Ukraine. Now, as we know, a lot of your North Koreans live right on the margin. There have been famines there in the recent past. They really do have a hand-to-mouth existence, a lot of people in that country. When they get sent to Russia, the Russians are paying them about $2,000 a month, the same that they pay Russians. It is reported. Now, of course, the North Korean government is taking most of that money. So there's analysis which suggests a financial benefit to Kim Jong-un of about $5 billion over the next year, just from sending soldiers and selling ammunition to the Russians. So there's a big financial benefit. The other question, it comes back to the missile test that will be talked about tonight in the Security Council. Is Russia going to give them advanced technology for things like nuclear weapons? A lot of speculation that those intercontinental ballistic missiles they have will get a multiple warhead capability courtesy of the Russians. We don't know that, and it might still take years for that technology to feed through. But
that seems reckless even for Russia, you'd have thought. But
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's the new world we're in. I mean,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of speculation as well that if Iran decides to move towards weaponizing its stockpile of highly enriched uranium as a result of everything we've seen in the past couple of months, the Israeli strikes, everything else, their face-off with Israel, that might also be part of Russian-Iranian cooperation, would be helping them with the technology of weaponizing that highly enriched uranium. So yeah, it's kind of a new world, and I guess that speaks to whoever wins the US election.
Sure. This is what I was going to say. How much does all of this change next week, one way or another? How much is North Korea doing this right now because there is a slight responsibility vacuum at the heart of the White House? Russia being more muscular because there's the same vacuum there. How much, whoever wins next week, does this all change?
Well, I don't think it changes in the sense of, and I'm sure we'll talk about this many a week, but the so-called axis of autocracies, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, this sort of concept that these guys are all now cooperating in a deeper and more meaningful way, particularly on military stuff. I don't think it changes that dynamic in the sense that they all still have a basically anti-American agenda and want to try and force America out of parts of the world where they wish to dominate. I think they have differing views about, who wins. So obviously Iran would be very nervous if Trump won, because he's on record as saying, let's go bomb the Iranian nuclear program. Whereas Russia might quite like it if Trump wins, because they think that'll pull the plug on Zelensky and the effort in Ukraine. But there is a huge interest, and the thing which I look at, and I look at North Korean behaviour and this increasingly intense cooperation with Russia, I look at other things too, and think, the levers that America has, we were just talking about diplomatically at the UN, if Russia is now going to block anything that puts additional pressure on North Korea because they've got this tight alliance, you've lost a diplomatic lever. And militarily, one of the things happening over the coming week, and this is routine stuff for the Pentagon, is they are moving one of the two aircraft carriers they've had positioned to move against Iran if that situation was to get out of control, out of the area, because they're having trouble sustaining two aircraft carriers in that part of the world. And so they're sending bombers to Qatar and various other things to sort of compensate. But the fact that America is having difficulty sustaining a deployment of just two carriers, they've got, 11 or 12 in the line, but for various reasons, it shows you the limits of American military power, that even maintaining a presence against a country the size of Iran, is not that easy for them. So anyone coming into the White House will be aware that they're all looking. They may well be testing. There may well be someone like Putin or Kim Jong-un or whoever who wants to test American resolve soon after this election. But their ability to respond to that test is diminished.
Yeah, that's fascinating. America goes to the polls tomorrow.
Yes, who could have missed it?
Yes, somehow it's passed me by until this very moment, but I'm reading it in front of me. What a shock. 48 hours from now, we might know who will be the next US president.
That's not a bad starting point, actually, because, the likelihood of legal challenges in many of these, people I'm sure will have got sick to the hind teeth of hearing about swing states, and within swing states, there are these bellwether counties, places where, it might come down to 1,000 voters here or 700 there. And there seems to be every likelihood that there could be challenges in quite a few of these. So the thing might go to the courts, in many of these particular contested counties. So how clear an idea we'll have in 48 hours, I don't know, unless, of course, some of the more... there's been a rash of optimism, I think, on the part of Kamala Harris supporters in the last few days, with some encouraging polling data and also encouraging early voting data and stuff like that suggests a lot of young people and particularly young women are voting, which I think is creating quite a bit of optimism in their camp.
I mean, you've got the polls in recent days, being more beneficial towards Harris. The bookies are still looking towards Trump. You get this overall sense of just nobody really having a clue on the ground what's going on.
Yes, that's true. I mean, look, as we know, there are people who go with gut hunches, there are people who go with polls, and then there are people who go with polls that they try to weight in terms of things like, shy Trump supporters who don't want to tell pollsters. And when you start to get to that level of psephology, people are winding in, sort of aiming off on the basis that they think lots of Trump supporters don't really want to say they're going to. But, you talk about gamblers. In a way, Nate Silver, the American polling analyst and guru, is the ultimate gambler. And he's just flipped overnight, apparently, from his statistical work suggesting it would be Trump to now suggesting it'll be Harris.
Yeah. It is so hard to keep on top of. There's a piece in the Times today in the comment section by Roy Teixeira, basically talking about how the Democrats' big problem is the extent to which they have, on a kind of institutional level, embraced radically progressive positions, which is putting off a lot of otherwise would-be Democrat voters. What do you think about that?
Well, I read it. It's a great piece. He also says he regards President Biden's liberalization of the immigration regime, or rather not trying so hard to enforce it and convict and deport people who were immigrating illegally, as a bit of a turning point in this past administration, and reckons it's prejudiced a big part of the US electorate. In fact, I'm not sure whether it's him who cites the CBS poll, but there is some polling that suggests 62% of Americans would favour deportation, immediate deportation of illegal migrants. So, it's an interesting piece. And I guess that a lot of that stuff, red meat for the culture war stuff about, pronouns and gender-specific toilets and all that sort of stuff is red meat for the MAGA base. How far it really tilts, centrist voters, I don't know. But I do think, and I think Teixeira is right in his article, that immigration has proven to be quite an issue. I was in Arizona earlier this year talking to people about the fact that the place is booming economically due to Biden's stimulus. And they're building a gigafactory and a Taiwanese advanced microchip factory. All these things are going on. And, why doesn't that get Biden more support? And even the latest polling in Arizona suggests it is heading for Trump, that swing state. A lot of people basically said, look, by running the economy hot here, he has sucked in a lot of migrant labour into the construction of these factories and stuff like that. So this migration issue is pretty pivotal to this election, I think.
Before I let you go, Mark, on the Middle East itself, Iran has not yet hit back against the Israeli strike, hitting back against the Iranian strike. Do you see that coming anytime soon? And to what extent might that delay be linked to the US election as well?
Well, this is an interesting one because I think last time we spoke, the view among analysts, and I'll put my hand up and say, including me, was no, this was probably the end of it. Iran had taken a blow to some important parts of their air defense and their missile industry. Perhaps time to end it. And various statements by the Iranians essentially downplaying the damage seemed to confirm that. Now we've had some much more bellicose statements from the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and from some Revolutionary Guard generals saying, no, they will hit back. It's very hard to know whether that they'll calibrate something quite low down or whether they'll really go for it and do another missile blitz like the one we saw at the beginning of October. It's very hard to say whether they are now themselves trying to de-escalate this or see that it's important not to lose face and feel they have to do something bigger.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark Urban. And you can hear Mark, of course, every time this Monday, and you can read him in the Sunday Times every week. And you can also watch Mark in a new video on the Times website talking about who the new Axis powers want to win the US election. Thank you very much indeed, Mark.